What's up, Unlocking Your Inner Strength listeners? How would you like to know the secret and effective, very powerful goal-setting method that I use that you can use week by week to move yourself down the field of success? Well, I have good news for you. I've put together a special report showing you exactly how to do this. Normally, it's $45, but since you're a loyal listener to the show, you can get it for only $10 at unlockingyourinnerstrength.com/time.
You're listening to The Inner Strength Show. If you want to step into your greatness, you've come to the right place. Here is your host, the human strength expert, Kyle Newell.
Hello, everybody. It's Kyle from Unlocking Your Inner Strength and unlockingyourinnerstrength.com once again. First of all, I want to thank all of you who have been giving me ideas and topics that you want to hear about on the show. And today's topic, which is going to be fast food, just kind of a play on words, was brought up to me by a few people that wanted to know my views on fasting and whatnot. Before we get to that, some of the other topics that were requested that will be coming up soon are how to gain muscle. That, as far as training, I consider to be one of my specialties. I was a scrawny kid growing up. People that have had those ectomorphic, which means naturally lean and skinny types of bodies that have followed my advice and programs have been able to put on significant weight. And when I go over that stuff, there's going to be some really cool stuff that I guarantee you've never heard anywhere else before. What else do we got? We had some requests for Tool Boy stories. And Tool Boy has, it is a real person. If you've read some of my writing, I've written about Tool Boy. But Tool Boy kind of symbolizes a larger theme. Tool Boy is more like your typical snowflake that thinks they can or he can copy what you do. But the problem is, with a Tool Boy type attitude, it comes across as inauthentic. And you can never be great if you're trying to be somebody else. Probably the time in my life where I felt the most anxiety and stress when I was trying to carve out my area in the world of strength and nutrition and fitness was when I was trying to emulate other people too much, thinking that they had some secret. And then I realized, wait a minute, that person's already taken. Be you. Combine ideas, develop your own philosophies and laws, doesn't matter how weird they are, and share them with the world. And that's when the anxiety and whatnot melted away, when I stepped into my character or who I am as a character. Have you ever heard anybody say, man, that guy's a real character? That usually means that they're referring to somebody, man or woman, that has a unique point of view, but their authentic point of view. They've become their character. So there you have it. Those are some topics. Oh, another topic too that's going to be coming up, which may interest some of you, was the topic of marketing and business stuff, which I don't talk a lot about on this show, but I will, because I consider business and small business and entrepreneurship to be one of my areas of expertise as well. So I'll talk about that, and I'll make sure it can relate to life, and for those of you that don't own businesses, and I guarantee you'll find it interesting. So just stay tuned for all that. Before we get into today's episode, don't forget to go to the website. We've been doing some work on that, and make sure you get on the email list. We are going to have a 30 to 40 minute audio book up there soon that will be free when you submit your email. And that book is not going to be found anywhere else because it is something that I am creating and have created for you, but I'm not posting it anywhere else. Keep an eye out for it. Today, what I want to go over, and I'm actually once again giving a workshop on this tonight, so you get to be the beneficiary of the first run of this. So you'll get to see some ideas as I go through this that I come up with on the spot, but that's how I continue to learn. When I teach stuff, I make new connections. I wanted to go over with you one of my main principles of nutrition and diet, which is intermittent fasting. Remember before I said we were going to go over fast food, not your typical fast food, but fasting in food. How did I get into intermittent fasting? If you had asked me this, let's say, even 4 years ago, I would have told you fasting is dumb. I had bought into the myth of the supplement industry and the pseudoscience and the bro science of having to eat frequently and eat often and 5 to 6 meals a day. I used to eat 8 meals a day when I was at the height of my bodybuilding foray. what I was doing, I was just following what was out there in the bodybuilding magazines and going based on what certain coaches were telling me. The problem is, though, those coaches and those magazines were just regurgitating vomit as far as I'm concerned that was not based in science. And if it was based in science, guess who funded those studies? It was the supplement industry. Think about the food industry and the supplement industry for 1 second. They are in business like anybody is in business to create a profit. To create a profit, does the food and or supplement industry need you to consume more of their product or less of their product? Just think about that for a second. The answer is obvious. They need you to consume more of it. Back to how did I get into fasting? I've told this in another episode. It was 2014. I was about 8 weeks out from doing 2 bodybuilding shows, the last 2 that I've done. And that was my comeback. I wanted Devin to see me compete. She had never seen me compete before. I hadn't competed since 2008. It was a comeback, though, from my first patellar tendon rupture. And you may or may not know the story. Shortly thereafter, competing that summer, 2.5 months later, I ruptured my right patellar tendon. That's another story for another day, though. I was concerned with, at the time, just getting my body fat as low as possible. We have different types of fat cell receptors on our body. And we have areas that hold stubborn fat. For females, typically your stubborn fat areas are your glutes and thighs. For men, typically it's your lower abdomen, your umbilical area, your love handles, low back. Stubborn fat areas have what's called an alpha receptor. Blood flow to those areas is very poor. So if you ever touch the areas where you know you have kind of stubborn fat, it's going to be colder to the touch. Blood flow is not good to that area. The problem is when we're trying to lose fat, you have to get blood into that area to transport the free fatty acids and the stored fat out of that area to be used as energy. So you can see the issue. If you can't get the blood in there, you can't get the stuff out of there. Well, it turns out one of the guys I was studying, Lyle McDonald, who I think is a genius when it comes to getting people lean, talked about this idea of fasting. Fasting has been shown to increase blood flow to the areas that have poor blood supply when it comes to stubborn fat. My initial reason for trying fasting was purely cosmetic. At the time when I read that, I would diet hard when I did bodybuilding shows. I was eating about 1,600 calories a day. Then I would have my spike day, which at that time was probably 8,000 to 9,000 calories a day, but the macros were all very detailed. And it worked. But what I noticed on my diet days, going from eating 4 small meals a day of 1,600 calories, which is a very low amount for a guy my size, is that when I cut that in half and I did the same amount of calories, 1,600 calories, and I did 2 meals a day and pushed that first meal, which I'll go over how you figure that out further back in the day, my appetite and my hunger levels were much more manageable. The other way felt like I was starving myself to death. And I was, in a way. That's what happens when you try to get that lean and force your body to do something it doesn't want to do as far as body fat. I remember going for a walk after I started implementing this and really researching it with Devin and Matina. And I told Devin, I said, I have not been this excited about something with nutrition probably in 10 years. So she knew I was into it, and it helped me get really lean. It simplified my life. We were all busy in life. You don't have time to sit there and 8 meals a day, let alone 4 meals a day or 6 meals a day. So I decided after the contest, I was going to continue on with the intermittent fasting. I started to notice other benefits. I noticed that my need to take hydrochloric acid, which is one of the main digestive enzymes in the stomach, dwindled. I didn't have to take it anymore. And I knew that because when I would take those pills, I started to get that burning sensation, which meant that hydrochloric acid had reached sufficient levels. Now, how could that be? Well, stress depletes hydrochloric acid levels in the gut. We all have too much stress. I remember when I learned from Charles Poliquin out in Arizona. He's had 5,000 students throughout the years go through his course, his biosignature course, and I've done course 1 and course level 2. He said out of 5,000 students, and these were people in the fitness industry, personal training industry, only 2 people had ever passed the hydrochloric acid test. And you do it through taking pills and seeing at which point do you feel the burn, which is just that hydrochloric acid. And it's because, again, stress depletes that enzyme. Tie in mind map here to your digestive system for a second. You need to be in the parasympathetic nervous system, which is rest, digest, and recovery, to digest your food properly. Most people don't have time to sit down, or I shouldn't say they don't have time. They don't create or carve out the time to sit down and eat a meal in peace. So they eat on the run. They eat while they're distracted. They eat in environments that they don't like. They eat around people they don't like. They eat while they're thinking of something else. What they're doing is they're eating while they're in their sympathetic nervous system, which is freeze, flight, or fight. That's your stress response. Now, when you're in that part of your nervous system, which most people I find are predominantly in throughout the day, even though they shouldn't be, is that your gut, blood is shunted away from your gut when you're in that survival mode. When you're in survival mode, even though it might not be life or death, most of the time it is not, your brain and nervous system are responding or reacting as if it were life and death, which means blood goes out to the limbs to prepare you for flight or fight. It just causes a whole cascade of nasty things. So I always tell people it's not as much what you eat as it is who you are when you eat. So intermittent fasting fits very nicely into the busy lifestyle. What's up, Unlocking Your Inner Strength listeners? How would you like to know the secret and effective, very powerful goal-setting method that I use that you can use week by week to move yourself down the field of success? Well, I have good news for you. I've put together a special report showing you exactly how to do this. Normally it's $45, but since you're a loyal listener to the show, you can get it for only $10 at unlockingyourinnerstrength.com/time. Another benefit you get from intermittent fasting is something called autophagy. Autophagy is when we fast for a long enough period of time, around that 16-hour mark, and something cool really starts to happen then. Your cells in your body get this message, the autophagy, to start clipping off bad parts of your cells that have become mutated or whatnot, that aren't performing properly, and it starts cleaning those up. And the only way we can activate that is through fasting. So that's an awesome health benefit. And I think you could kind of connect the dots to cancer issues down the road and whatnot. Another thing with intermittent fasting is that you're either in an insulin metabolism or a glucagon metabolism. Insulin is the hormone that we're trying to manipulate the most by using a fasting approach. Insulin is the most anabolic hormone in the body. If you've ever read bodybuilding magazines, like when I was first starting, I wanted to put on weight so bad. So I was trying to take advantage of insulin by eating very simple sugars after my workout combined with protein to spike insulin, which would help my muscles grow by also consuming some kind of protein or protein shake at that time. Well, yes, insulin is very anabolic, but for most people, that means it's helping your fat cells grow. Anabolism or anabolic means to grow. It doesn't just mean your muscles. And for most people, the average person, when you eat, and I'm going to go over calorie partitioning in a second, more of the food is going, or at least 50% of it's going to fat cells. If you're genetically blessed, more of it's going to go to the muscle cells. We're going to try to manipulate that though. But if you're in an insulin metabolism, when insulin is raised, you cannot lose body fat. It is impossible to lose body fat. That's where this idea of fasted cardio came into play, but there's other ways to do that as well. Glucagon signals the body to release stored fat. You can't be in that part of your system all the time either, but you want to have a good balance. You want to be in that part of your system more often than you are in your insulin, dominant metabolism. So when we eat breakfast is one of the biggest myths in the history of mankind. If you actually look at the social implications of where breakfast came from as well, breakfast was started for malnourished people that couldn't put on weight and had trouble keeping food down. Then, of course, marketing geniuses got a hold of this breakfast. Everybody breaks the fast, but this breakfast idea, and now it's a whole industry, trillions of dollars, right? When we eat breakfast, insulin goes up, growth hormone comes down because cortisol comes down. So to me, you cannot argue with this principle of intermittent fasting when you look at hormones. Cortisol should rise and spike right before we wake up. About 2 hours before we wake up, just shows you how brilliant the body is. Cortisol starts to rise, and it'll peak when it wakes us up. On a normal functioning body, that's around 6 a.m. Let me go back. The reason cortisol spikes then, in case you missed it in some of the Mind Map episodes, is because it's an alertness hormone. It's getting us ready for the day. Yes, we wake up in nice, safe environments now, in a safe bed, but go back to how the brain evolved. When you're waking up out in the jungle, when you're waking up and you have to scan the environment for threats and enemies. So cortisol is a very, very cool hormone. It gets a bad rap. Now, we want cortisol to rise because as it rises, growth hormone is going to spike. Growth hormone is excellent for fat loss and mobilizing fat stores. But again, we have something called the fishing effect, which is when insulin goes up, cortisol is going to come back down. So we're manipulating that with the intermittent fasting. For men, you want to have at least 16 hours between your last meal and your first meal. So if you ate at 8 p.m., your next meal at the earliest would be noon. Now, yes, you can have tea and coffee and water in the morning. As I record this, it's about 3 p.m. I still haven't eaten for today. I usually eat between 1:30 and 3, so I'll eat right after this episode before I head into the gym to coach tonight. You're not going to starve. I mean, your muscles aren't going to waste away. And I was always working out on an empty stomach even before I started this. And another thing you're going to notice, you say, oh, this is bad for gaining muscle. No, it's not, because you're going to increase your insulin sensitivity, which is going to help your calorie partitioning. So we want to manipulate where are those calories going to go when we eat them. We want them to get driven into the muscle. So if fasting increases insulin sensitivity, and so does working out. I work out in the morning, and insulin sensitivity is kind of optimized for me. When I eat, I know that I'm getting a very favorable direction as to where my food is going, where my nutrients are getting broken down to. So this has tremendous benefits to your body composition over time. Too many people focus on the external, how much you're eating. Plays a role, but it's more the biochemical and hormonal environment of your body, what's going on the inside, that's going to dictate your body composition. Going back to some of the myths with this, I talked about breakfast. This idea of small meals, I touched upon at the beginning. This idea that small meals speeds up your metabolism is one of the dumbest ideas I've ever heard of. Yes, I know there's research studies to back it up that were funded by supplement companies. I know this for a fact. When you're trying to change your body composition and lean up, you don't need to eat more often. You need to eat less often. And it goes back to who you are when you are eating, meaning what state of the nervous system you're in. I've had people throughout the years that are very nervous when it comes time for vacation. I'm going on vacation. What should I do? Should I work out? Should I diet? And I always say, no. I've made that mistake too many times in my life. You go and you relax and you enjoy. Now, what winds up happening almost all of the time is they come back either the same weight or they've actually dropped weight. And they're shocked, but I'm not, because when you go on vacation, typically you're in a more relaxed state. You're getting more sleep. You're in your parasympathetic nervous system. So they're eating in the state that they should actually be in, which, if you're doing intermittent fasting, works out again nicely. Most people can find 2 times a day where they can get away from everybody for 20 minutes at their lunchtime and eat in peace. And then at night for your dinner. I love my dinner because it's when the day is over, I'm chilling out, I'm relaxed, there's no distractions. So a nice meal at the end of the day. So it works again nicely for many people. Some days I do a 24-hour fast. That doesn't mean I go the whole day without eating. It means I'll eat dinner one night, and then my next meal is going to be a dinner the next day. And I'll do that if I want to kind of turn up the dial and drop a little body fat. Great for the mind. So remember, this is awesome for the function of the mind when we raise catecholamines such as adrenaline, noradrenaline, and cortisol. Growth hormones good for brain function. So just a lot of really, really good benefits. Last myth I want to talk about, and I actually have something here that my mom gave me. It says 50 great ways to live longer. And she told me when she was here this past weekend that it says in there, Kyle, that you shouldn't eat before bed, which I laughed. And I said, this is another one of these just dumb lies that doctors put out there, because they say somehow your metabolism is going to shut off. Your metabolism shuts off when you die. It doesn't shut off when you sleep. Go back to the parasympathetic nervous system. That's the part of your nervous system you have to be in to sleep and get adequate rest. And we want to focus more on quality of sleep, not quantity. But this activation, this chronic activation of the sympathetic fight, flight, or freeze response is why most people have trouble sleeping. They can't shut off their brain. Now, to digest, we want to be parasympathetic. To sleep, we want to be parasympathetic. Doesn't it make sense that we have a nice meal before going to bed, which is going to release things like dopamine and serotonin in the brain? And I actually figured this out when I was competing back in 2008, where I would place my carb meal and my bigger meal right before bed. It would help me sleep at night. When you're starving yourself to that degree, it's very hard to sleep, especially as your nervous system continues to be ramped up and wired all the time. And at that time, too, I was doing a lot of stimulants, ephedra, things of that nature. So no, you don't have to avoid eating. My voice just cracked. I guess I'm going through puberty. But you don't have to avoid eating before bed. Eat your bigger meal before bed. That's when it goes hand in hand. Perfectly fine. Been doing that forever. And again, you look at hormones and you just use some common sense. I don't see how you can argue with that. So that's it for today. That's my view on intermittent fasting. Females, by the way, I would say what I found works best is a 14-hour fast, a little bit less. Females are different hormonally. So we won't go into the difference of hormones between men and women right now, but maybe we'll touch on that in a future episode. Don't forget to spread the word, leave a positive review or any review. I'll take anything, whatever, on iTunes. Let me know what you're thinking. Tell some friends about the show. It's really starting to spread. It's starting to get around the country, which is really cool. Let me know the episodes or topics that you want to hear. I appreciate you listening, and I'll be back next week. Peace.
You've been listening to The Inner Strength Show. If you enjoyed the show, remember to subscribe, rate, and review us in iTunes.